and welcome to Man's Model Moments Midweek Model Meet. And got here just in time. Just getting a drink. So let's have a little look at what we're doing. So first of all, let me invite in tonight's guest. You all know him. It's Gary.
Hi Alex, how you doing, mate?
I'm not doing too badly, thank you, Gary. How about yourself?
Good. All right. On countdown to holiday, so I'm really happy.
Oh, wow. Where are you going?
Go back to Albania next Tuesday.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. It'll be our 10th year visiting. Just love it there.
Why have I got a little weird bit there? Don't know what that's about.
I've asked that question so many times of myself.
Yeah, why is there such a strange thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like sometimes you can see what it is, but I can't see anything there. It's like, oh well, just one of those things.
One of those things.
So let's see, who do we have in chat tonight? We've got a few people in. We've got Graham Green, we've got John Alec, we've got David Markey. Good to see you all. We have Mark Grad over in the States. We've got Julian Hall. We've got World War II scale models Dave. We have, just going down, we've got Travis Thompson. We've got Rally Chef's Model Shed. We've got Monsieur Lepstra. See how I avoided that again? I'll get your first name right at some point in the future.
Yeah.
We've got Drew. We've got Adrian. Just scrolling. We've got Stuart, Keith, John Christmas. Good to see you all. We have Casey. Welcome. And tonight I'm going to be drinking good old sparkling summer fruits water. So let's get some of that going just to wet my whistle.
Very sensible.
And well, it's because I left my beer at the shop.
All right, okay. I thought you were being really quite sensible and health and water and da.
Nah. Forgot.
God bless you, government.
I have to say the stuff I got at the shop is like 0% alcohol stuff. Purely because I finished all the IPA. Oh, we got mixed mystery box Nick. We got Locks. We got no gin tonight. No, I'm afraid not, Graham. So I've been talking a little bit about. So obviously, the last couple of videos I've done have been on scale and how our penchant for scale in different subjects has changed over the last 80 years. So I've obviously done aircraft, I've done military vehicles, I'm doing civilian vehicles at the moment, which is really interesting. And actually, I will talk a little bit about the origin of some scale, because when you start talking about cars, especially, you get to the great 1/24th, 1/25th debate. And it's a very, very simple explanation, actually. It all goes down to manufacture, how these things were actually made. Back in the day, it comes down to that. But what I thought we would discuss, as you know, we're talking about scale a bit, and we are scale modelers. But one of the things, obviously, that came out in the research to those two videos was scale wasn't always a thing. So back in sort of post-war, there was a lot of no scale offerings, a lot of things which were box scale, Revell, I think, springs to mind as one of those sort of current companies that used to do that. But back in the 40s and 50s, it was very common. So all the companies like Renwall, like Glencoe, all of these old American companies, many of them, a lot of the original Japanese companies like Sanwa, they all used to produce, and Tamiya, actually, all used to produce models which were just sized to the box, which really got me thinking, especially because I'm also doing some research for space and sci-fi, and guess what? Scale becomes a lot less important, in terms of what the scale is, say military or aircraft scale. So I thought I'd just raise the topic, especially for those of you in chat. Remember, if you have a question or comment, it's comment or question in capital letters or QQQ, CCC, just so it helps us pick it out of the. And it's great to see you all chatting there, but just for those things, it helps us focus, because we lose focus a lot.
We need focus. Definitely need focus.
But I thought, a lot of people talk about what scale they do, but I was thinking, well, is scale itself actually really that important? As a personal insight to this, so for instance, vehicles, here's that Land Rover. I was talking a little bit on the member stream last night about the Chevy Blazer from Rivet, from Stranger Things. I'm obviously doing this ICM truck, Kamaz. For me, the scale of those subjects, I don't actually care about. Also, the Lancia Stratos that I'm going to be building, 1/12 scale. Does it matter that it's 1/12 scale to me? Not really. It's just a big Lancia Stratos. It's a big cheese wedge that I happen to want to do. So I just thought I'd put the question out there. What do you think, Gary? Is scale important? Is scale an important factor for you?
Not especially. Only in as much as I have a limited amount of space to do anything. I won't be attempting a 1/32 scale Lancaster anytime soon. A, because I don't want to spend 600 quid buying one, and B, because it's just too big. It's just way too big for where I work. So, I have, thanks to our friends from Ukraine, discovered that 1/32 is a lot more fun than I used to think it was for aeroplanes. I'm just building the HS123, and I am absolutely loving it. Oh, it's just so much fun.
I bought a set of Edward seatbelts because I think it deserves it.
Yeah, definitely. But I just thought, that is a nice size, and it's handy. But there's so much detail that you can pick out, even just in plastic, even without photo etch this and 3D resin, that just out of the box there is so much detail in the cockpit. It looks really lovely, and I'm really, really happy with it. So, as you say, apart from there's no seatbelts, that's the only thing.
Yeah, but I think
I love it.
I mean, again, having done all this research, and anybody can go onto ScaleMates. In fact, I will pull up ScaleMates for a not right now to show you guys, but I'll pull it up just so that I've got it there to remind me, because we can have a look. And especially if you look at the 40s, the 50s, 60s, start to define things a bit more. But people were making all kinds of stuff. I mean, 1/21st scale, 1/17th. These aren't things that naturally trip off the tongue, or I mean, there are some other scales which don't really exist now, which make sense, like 1/20th. That kind of makes sense. Anything decimal, again, because we've got 10 fingers, seems to kind of make sense. 1/10th, 1/20th, 1/100th scale, and actually they're not very common, not very common at all. Whereas 1/72nd, you think, what a weird scale that is, really. If you think about the numbers of it. So it just occurred to me, and thinking about my own stuff, I've used to, many years ago, be a 1/72nd scale modeler mainly. And that came from, on the military side, from, originally playing with tanks and soldiers, and then that sort of led into wargaming. From the aircraft, that was what was around. It was available. There were more 1/72nd scale kits. Like you said, a question of scale and price. Size and price. My dad and I did the 1/24 scale airfix Stuka. And he got me for Christmas one year. And that was a massive thing. I don't think I was even aware really of what scale it was. You know, as a child, I don't think I paid a teenager. I didn't really pay attention to that.
No.
So, you know, we talk a lot about scale and about the different scales without really, I think, thinking about, well, what does that mean? You know, what is the scale? Why do we build in certain scales? And I think, again, just talking off the top of my head, but one of the things I put in the last video was the market decides what it wants, right? Because the companies, to start with, offered us a whole, even Tamiya itself, one company was offering all kinds of scales of tanks. But what became popular was 1/35th. Why did it become popular? I think probably because of that balance of, it was a decent size, so it had a decent amount of detail, and it probably didn't cost that much. If it was the bigger ones, probably cost a bit too much, and the smaller ones were probably a bit too small. So it just happened that 1/35th, because they didn't design it as 1/35th, it just happened to be. But it just reached that, you know, that crystallization point almost. And I think,
but it kind of interested me. It's 1/35th, not 1/36th, because 1/36th is an inch is 3 feet. Yeah, 1/48th, an inch is 4 feet. It makes sense so much more. 1/35th. I don't know if there's a metric equivalent. I don't think there is. Maybe
no, I think they just produced it.
Again, this was 5 centimeter figure or something.
I think it was box size. I think Tamiya produced something for a box. It was very popular, so they worked out, well, what is the scale of this? Because we want to be consistent. Because one of the things they did on the boxes is put, you know, identical scale, so they're all the same. You know, which was a thing that people weren't necessarily doing. And they just happened to be 1/35th. And it's like, right, okay, we'll do that. Because before, spoilers for the next video, but going back to the difference between 1/24th and 1/25th, the reason 1/24th scale and also 1/16th scale, 1/32, 1/64, any even like multiple of 8 basically, is because masters, so when you made a model back in 1960 or 1950, you would, particularly car models, you would make a master model in 8th scale, and all of the numbers and everything were derived from the actual size vehicle. They often worked with motor manufacturers back in the day, so this is primarily in America. They would get the numbers, they would convert them on paper to 1/8 scale, they would make a 1/8 scale model, and then they would use something called a reduction pantograph, also known as a pantograph lathe, to create the whatever tooling from that scale, that master, in 1/8 scale. So of course it works in like 1.5 or 2 or whatever. So it has to be, you can't make a 1/25th scale model from a 1/8 scale master. It has to be, you know, some multiple or derivative of the 8. So of course, when they make drawings of all of this, so that's 1/24th scale. When they made drawings, so you get the stuff from the factory, all this stuff, and then you draft. Anybody that knows drafting knows that it's done as 1/10th scale. So that's the standard reduction that you do. So somebody at some point said, well, hang on a minute, wouldn't it be a hell of a lot easier if we made these masters in 1/10th scale, and then it comes directly from the drawings? We don't have to do any faffing about converting from the drawings to 1/8 scale. And so they made a 1/10th scale master. And because they wanted, or, you know, similar size, 1/25th was possible from that. So it's like, well, that's not so much of a problem because there's no real size difference. Like on 100 millimeters, it works out at less than 4 millimeters. So okay, yeah, that's fine. And they did that. Nobody will notice, you know. And as we all know, 1/24th and 1/25th scale are often used interchangeably by manufacturers without changing anything in the box. It's the same model. And actually, the accuracy of some of the model making stuff at the time is probably less than the difference between them. But that's the kind of where you go back to the origin. It's how the models are made, and this really late 19th century, early 20th century invention of this reduction pantograph. It's also known as a reducing machine, but that sounds like something that's using, 1950s cosmic rays to shrink something down.
Yeah. Or the cosmetics industry.
Yes. And HO scale, so 187th, when they were making trains, they actually made a 129th scale master, which I just, who knows? But that's some of where that, where the scales, how the scales came about in terms of why is it 125th to 124th. But that shows that from their point of view, they weren't really thinking about it has to be 124th. It's like we want it to be about this big. It's like,
yeah.
And it's like, okay, if we've got a 1/10 scale master, then we just reduce it by 2.5. If it's a 1/8, then it's by 2, 3, 2.4, whatever. So it's again comes back to that. Excuse my dog barking in the background. And again, like 1/24 scale for a car, or 1/25 scale is quite a nice size, about the same size as a 1/35 scale tank. So again, and you think a 1/72nd aircraft is, again, it's about hand size, right, for a fighter or 2-engined aircraft. Something obviously 4 engines starts to get a bit bigger. But I wonder if scale really comes down to it's a nice physical size. Physical size of the model is something that you're comfortable working with. And I wonder if the sort of prevalence of 1/72nd scale when modelers are younger, and I don't just mean kids, I mean like younger scale modelers, is also a matter of that, because of not just eyesight but dexterity and kind of available funds as well. Whether all these things factor into it, because again, like you said, that HS 126 in 1/32nd scale, it's a nice size, like a 1/48 scale World War II fighter.
It's that big, in fact.
Yeah, which
is lovely.
Which is about the same size as a 1/48 scale, I don't know, Corsair or something.
Yeah.
So, I
wonder also if the manufacturers, especially in the sort of short production run part of the industry, just find it a lot easier with 1/72nd. The sizes of the molds they've got to invest in. Bluntly, the amount of plastic it takes to mold them as well. Whether that's helps their market positions be able to sell shorter run, slightly less obvious subjects at an affordable and somewhere where they can get their money back. Whereas I think at 1/48, there's all the structural issues of the plastic and the molding and stuff like that, and then maybe we actually really need to go to high pressure molding for that, and that's going to treble the molding costs and all the rest of these things. So maybe it's a lot of decisions by especially a lot of smaller companies to say, no, that 1/72nd works for us because of the size of the products and how much we can charge for it, how much it costs us. Well,
and I think also, and this came out in the last video with the military vehicles, I was really surprised, because I always like it doing research for these sorts of things, because you have an idea, a rough idea, and then you find out something new. And it's like the number of 48 scale manufacturers now that are 3D printed kits or 3D printed minis. So 4 of the top 5 companies making, in terms of numbers of releases, are 3D printing and resin casting companies. So Tamiya is the only one in the top 5 making injection molded plastic kits, which again is because 1/48 scale for vehicles, that is manageable. in 3D printing. 35th, really not so much, especially with resin, where you get problems with warping and, all those post-curing effects that you can get that aren't as prevalent with the smaller scales. And it allows that new technology. But that also got me thinking about, well, if a lot of where the scales came from is down to the technology, basically, how we used to make models. Now, of course, it doesn't matter at all. In the last, let's say 20 years, or say 25 years, this millennium, almost everything is produced by CAD. It's now CNC machined. So all of that, there's no manual or semi-manual process whereby somebody is using a master and transferring it via this, piece of engineering, painted in British racing green with brass knobs on it.
Absolutely.
It's a guy sitting at a computer with a piece of software that goes into, yes, an engineering piece of equipment, but one that's in a sealed room, which is operated by a computer. There is no need for any of that specific scale stuff. If you wanted a 1/70th scale model, you just resize your CAD design and machine appropriately. If you want it to be 1/11.5 or 1/126th or 127th or whatever, you can do it now at the touch of getting calculator out, feeding in the numbers, working out what it is, and plugging those into your software. Probably more advanced software will just do it for you. I'm also noticing there's a few comments here, so I'm just trying to keep up with those. So apologies if I stop occasionally just to get those. So let us know what you think, guys. And given that, is there room now for new scales going forwards? Because one of the ones, again, I keep plugging the video last night because it wasn't doing as well as the first one. So if you haven't seen the military vehicles one, go and watch it. But one of the things that came out of that is obviously in the last 10 years, 1/56th scale has become a thing. Now, 1/56th scale isn't anything in terms of, the tool creation. It didn't come out of, any of that. It's come from Games Workshop and 28mm as a skirmish wargaming scale, and then that's been passed on to bolt action and whatever. And it's really not about the 1/56th, and wargamers don't use a scale like that. They will always talk about 28mm or 32mm. They talk about the size of the figures later. So I'm just ordering my food. So I wonder really what the future is in terms of scale. Is it that we have become very set in our ways, and will things like 1/35th scale carry on? I suspect they will. But in these sort of fringe areas where you have new stuff coming up, got a new popular game, people jump on that. 1/56 scale has really come out of nowhere, and yet it's being adopted by some fairly major companies. Italieri full for it now, which really you think 20 years ago somebody had said, "Oh, I want to buy 1/56 scale tank." People looked at you and said, "What? You mean 1/48 scale?"
Yeah.
So let me go back to a couple of the comments. So first of all, thank you very much, John Alec, and also World War II Scale Models Dave, both of whom have gifted 5 Man's Model Moments memberships. So if you get one of those, I think Dave actually also posted a follow-up one. There we go. Don't forget to check out the Discord channel. Links in the post section on this channel. So again, just go to the YouTube channel. There is a private members post that will have the Discord link on. Come and join us. It's the easiest way to chat to me, and we post all kinds of stuff on there. We've got the group build going. We've got various other bits and bobs, sneak peeks, all those kinds of things. So thank you very much for those. Casey says, for me, the scale is more connected to the compromise of available free space at my place versus my wish for details. I wish there was a scale between 1/72 and 1/48. Well, I think I think that's probably a synopsis of what most people feel about the compromise of space to the detail you want. In terms of wishing there was a scale between 1/72 and 48, I mean, there are almost an infinite grade of scales available, readily tooled ones, different. What would that be? 1/56th?
Probably.
You know, for me, 1/56th isn't different enough to 1/48. You know, I get that it is all based around a skirmish war game, but I don't think I would create a vehicle in that if I wasn't playing the game. You know, it's very much linked to that game system for me. You know, or unless I wanted to kind of do some mix and match thing with Warhammer, you know, and have a. But again, I'm connected to game systems. So, Julian says, comment 72, 48, 24, 32 are all divisible by 8. Perhaps computer involvement in design decided those sizes. Wasn't computers, predates computers by, well, not really predating computers, but it was the technology, actually. The reduction pantograph does predate computers. And I'm sure all of you, if you don't know what I mean by a pantograph, a pantograph is basically something where you can trace something and it'll draw it at a selectable multiplier of the original. And that can be the same, it can be larger or greater. I'm sure all of you would have probably used one as a child or as an adult. They look like a kind of spidery thing. I'll bring one up, but you put a pen in one, you anchor it in the other, and you've got a tracing bit. You trace around something, and then it'll draw. Now, a reducing machine is a little bit more complicated than that. It's kind of a machine, obviously, and it's like a lathe, which does the same thing in 3D. So it's not quite as accessible as the standard pantograph. But let me just see. I've got a picture, if I can get one, which isn't obscured by my microphone. There we go. Now I can't actually move my mouse. So, okay, that's going to have to be that. I'm going to have to move my microphone a little bit. Here we go. So, reduction pantograph, images. Here we go. Let me share the screen with you. This is a reduction pantograph. So you see you have this fixed point, you have your original, and then you have, you know, a pen or whatever that you put in one end. You trace this around your little figure here, and then it draws it out there. And it can be either way, right? Obviously, if you want to reduce something, your original will be on this side, and then your copy gets reduced. And then you can change where these join to change the multiplier or divider between those two. So reduction machine, the lathe version, as I say, is a little bit more complicated. And this is where I was referring to the the British green with the flywheels and, you know, very Victorian. I think it might have been a Frenchman who invented it, sadly. But sorry, I'm removing Gary and not that. Sorry, apologies for that.
No worries.
And oh, actually, this is just to show you that it is predates computers. So one of the common uses for it, as you can see here, is in mints, in producing coinage. So my son actually worked at Cardiff Royal Mint for a brief time, and they use these, the masters that they have there are these huge things like this, like you saw in that picture. And then obviously you can go, the machine can trace that form onto a smaller master, which is then used for actually striking the coins themselves. So the technology, I mean, it's fairly basic, right? It's just trigonometry, you know, it's angles and machining and engineering. It's a very physical thing. Now, of course, not used at all. And you can see where the errors start to creep in with something like that. You know, if you get an error in your master, or somebody makes a little mistake, you know, or the machine skips across a bit, that can get transferred smaller, obviously. And some of the artifacts that, you know, you do see in older types of kits can come in. And that's where there's a little bit of imprecision comes in. You don't get that with a CNC machine, obviously. I need to move my... There we go. The Little Things Junkie says, I think a specific scale only matters for collections of models, for research and scratch building, and for simplicity, clarity, and convenience when talking about models. I think that's a really good point. So one of the reasons that I started, I mean, obviously I started in 72nd scale, and one of the reasons I stuck with it when I came back to modeling, well, several reasons. It was affordable. It was familiar. The space they took up was small, and everything was comparable to everything else. So I had a 1/72 Spitfire. I could see what an ME262 looked like next to that, you know, and how the ME262 compared to a B17. You know, you've got that sense of this. We're going to use the word scale a lot, I feel, tonight, but you've got a sense of the scale of them, you know, the comparison between them, which if they were all the same size, you know, you kind of wouldn't. If you had a 48 scale 262 and a, you know, 1/63 scale B17, well, how big are the things in real life? It's like, well, I know this one's bigger, but, you know. And I think the reasons that we come to talk about scale, because I think that second point there about, or third point, I guess, simplicity, clarity, and convenience when talking about models, you need a frame of reference. So Gary, if you just built a model of, well, say the HS 120, is it 123 or 126?
123.
23, yeah. What was the HS 126? Was the one?
Yeah, that was the high wing reconnaissance, two-seater reconnaissance plane.
Yeah, with the big struts. Yeah,
really big up wing. Yeah.
I haven't made it up then. I'm not going that senile yet. Then that's good.
No.
Or at least not for that reason.
No.
So you just made that model of that, and you want to talk about it. You don't have it with you, so you can't show it me, or the video's failed or whatever. It's difficult for you to convey that. You know, how big is it? How big is the model you've made? Well, it's about a little bit longer than, you know, it's 12 inches.
Sort of, well, the wing's about that, and the fuselages are probably about that.
Yeah. And you can kind of describe it in sort of how big it is, but that doesn't really give me a sense of, okay, well, how big was that in real life? So I think as was demonstrated by the joint European and NASA project, where we smashed a probe into Mars at 10 times what it should have been going, shows that a common frame of reference is really important.
Well, it should have used aero braking in the atmosphere, not burnt up in the atmosphere. Was the original intent there, and that was largely due to a conflict between engineers and the navigation team in the units they used.
Yes.
Which is very embarrassing. It's interesting. On an aside, when they were building the International Space Station, of course, the Japanese and Canadian and European modules all built in metric, and everything American was designed in imperial. And they actually looked at converting the American drawings completely to metric. I think it was something over $20 million it was going to cost. And they just said, forget it. With tolerances and good seals, we'll be fine. We'll be fine.
That's kind of right. Just make the rubber seal a bit bigger and it will seal between them. Yeah,
absolutely. So they talk about thousandths of an inch, and the Europeans talk about microns and whatever, and they get by eventually. And it doesn't leak, but not too much.
It's within spec. Yeah.
It's just crazy, absolutely crazy.
It's one of the things actually I think is interesting now we've got to CNC and CAD and stuff is, and you can see it in examples like the airfix Gannet, right? Is the precision of parts. The tolerances are so small now. Like that Gannet wing you can put in, and if you don't want to glue it, you don't have to glue it because it's tight enough without being too tight that it will just fit. It just fits. You can't imagine that on a 1970s, 1980s kit. I mean, you can imagine it. That's all you could do because it wouldn't happen. Not by design, maybe by accident. No. So given that, I mean, certainly among our discussion, although I've not been looking at the live, so I may have missed some comments. Scale doesn't seem to be, foremost in our minds. I'm not going out thinking, I have to have a 1/50th scale because that appeals to my, sensibilities. It's a nice round number, which, again, going back to my videos in the research, if you looked at companies like Marusan and Sanwa, that's what they did. They obviously looked at others who were making 1/48 scale, 1/72. It's like, well, that's stupid. We'll do 1/50th. That's a nice round number. Maybe they were doing their drawings in 1/10. Well, that's just a fifth of that, and then we'll go half of that for 1/100th. That's all makes logical sense. If we were talking about those scales today, I can absolutely understand how that would prevail, but people didn't buy them. 1/50th scales. There were quite a few companies making 1/50th scale at a time, but they never really took off. I just wonder how, if we didn't have the kind of sensibilities of that and the restrictions that came from the manufacturing, if we could just start with a clean slate now with any scale available, what would we choose? What do you think we would end up with? Because I doubt it would be
that big.
Yeah,
everything would be about that big. Just sort of easy to put on a tabletop sort of size, easy to put on a decent sized shelf without it falling off. That's the kind of size I would imagine, just sort of about that sort of size. As you say, maybe there'd be a lot more fluidity with scales like the old days.
Yeah, which is exactly where people were in the sort of 40s and 50s when it was just like, there's a model of, I don't know, a Beechcraft Bonanza or whatever. I'll buy it. And it's about that size. That's great. What scale is it? I haven't the foggiest clue.
Yeah.
1/27th.
Yeah, it's something. It's just something. It's about but it builds about that big. That's what it would do. I don't know if there doesn't seem to feel to me a natural, if you like, scale. It's scales that have evolved and that we've got used to, but it doesn't seem to me to be a natural requirement of scale other than it should fit on a reasonable sized shelf or something like that. Because if you're going to show them off, that's what you want it to sit on a shelf, most likely.
Yeah. So BP here says, in my honest opinion, scale only becomes important when you want to include your work with other models in a diorama or vignette. The second consideration is adding suitably scaled aftermarket. So I think the comparison thing is an interesting one, because obviously in a model show or a club, and if you're all modeling 1/24 scale cars, then everything is directly comparable. So I absolutely get it for that. And to a certain extent, I think as well in competition, because then you can say that everybody is equal. You've removed the external factors. And look at the IPMS Nationals in Telford. You have so many categories. And then the winner overall is always controversial, because how do you compare something that, you could mount on something like this to, a 1/8 scale aircraft or something, which is huge and takes up most of the table. So I think that comparison thing is an important part. But again, I think that's come out of the hobby rather than it being a natural part to start with. So kind of brings me back to that original premise of, is scale important? We kind of know it is important, but I don't think we intuitively know why, if that makes sense. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. Isn't 1/64 a railroad scale? Now that's quite possible, because I don't understand rail scales at all, because they're a horrible mess. Because you think that the British, you have the HOOO scale, which I never got, because they're two different scales, right?
Yep.
But we compromised because of it's something to do, and I always get it wrong. And there's I always have this. So I've got a customer called Ray who explains this to me, and it never seems to sit in my brain. But wasn't it like the gauge of the railway was different from the scale of the things that were actually on the tracks for some reason? I don't know why. And we had a different scale than the Americans, and there's just this whole mess. It seems a real mess in rail, more so I think than modeling. Like TT is 1/20th, right? But N gauge is what, 1/28th or something.
I have no idea. Absolutely no idea. Which
is similar to, you can get away with 1/144 scale vehicles and stuff. It's just like, what?
I can't be doing this.
No. And the scales, 1/76th and 1/87th. It's just like they are. It's like somebody decided, it's like, right, what are the worst times tables that we could possibly get into all of this? Let's choose those numbers to make it really impenetrable for anybody outside of the club. Oh dear. Oh, is someone muted?
Oh, I don't know.
Not quite sure where that. I don't know what that means. Brian says, I like it where scale isn't all that important, for example, in science fiction. Now, that brings me to another point I kind of wanted to bring up on this. So, I don't know if you've seen this, Gary, the ridiculously oversized boxed Mandalorian.
Oh, no. Oh, so right.
This is 1/12 scale, right? So it's which, funny enough, makes it about that big.
Okay.
And 1/12 scale is an actual scale and everything, which is fine. But in Star Wars, the only reason I showed it is because it's Star Wars. Revell do a lot of Star Wars kits, and obviously with Bandai as well, and do Bandai's kits reboxed. Now, Bandai's kits are 1/72nd or 1/144th scale. For comparison purposes. Revel's kits are not. So Revel do a range of fairly cheap, they're about £7 kits. They do a TIE fighter, they do Darth Vader's TIE fighter, they do an X-Wing, they do the Millennium Falcon, they do a Snow Speeder, and they do a Star Destroyer. There isn't a common scale between them.
Mm-hmm.
People complain about it enormously.
Yeah.
And I kind of get that, because I think the Snow Speeder is something like 1/64th scale, and the TIE Fighter's like 1/125th, or, So as a group, yeah, they're roughly the same size. But, a Star Destroyer is meant to be this massive thing that carries hundreds of TIE fighters.
Mm-hmm.
Here you are comparing it 1-to-1 with something that it's supposed to carry hundreds of, which feels weird. And then here you've got it fighting with something which, they're both one-man fighters, and yet they're in different scales. And again, that feels weird. I get why people are annoyed by that.
Mm.
But then I suppose you come to, well, what should that scale be?
Well, yeah. I mean, the problem is the range of size of subjects that you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, on one side you've got a Death Star. On the other end of the scale, you've got an Ewok. I mean, what scale are we going to do these at, guys? Well, let me think. Well, what should we do here?
This is the size of a small moon.
Yeah. It's just, there's got to be compromises, but I think science fiction, as you say, is probably one of the things where scales are going to go absolutely crazy for many reasons, other than, and I know I'll probably upset an awful lot of people by saying this, is I don't know, do we actually know how big a Death Star is? And isn't it made up? Sorry, I said the bad word.
I'm just waiting for the sky to fall.
I know. So there's all sorts of things that think. Well, and I know there's a whole wiki universe describing how big things actually are, but they're not. And so it would be difficult to say, to write and say, well, I bought this kit of this thing and it's listed as 1/270,000th scale, and I've measured it, and that would mean it would be this big in reality, when of course everyone knows it was this big. And you think, I'm struggling now, because if someone says to me, they built this, got this model of a Spitfire and it's this scale, and I can measure it, and at the very worst I can go down the road to Hendon with a tape measure and say, excuse me, can I measure your Spitfire, please? You know what I mean? There's a confusion there between scale and reality, and I know everyone's going to, people are going to be that size. They're in a galaxy far, far away. I don't think they're human necessarily. So again, scale becomes quite a problematic thing to be that strict about, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I think when you've got something which is imagination, effectively, and yes, there's a lot of it's kind of backfilling is the word, I guess, because when George Lucas came up with Star Wars, he wasn't thinking of, okay, a lightsaber is exactly this many inches long, it's got this, it's powered by kyber crystals. No, all of that has been backfilled and gradually built up in terms of the lore and the extended.
Yeah, but works with the FX guys and say, no, just a little bit longer, I think. They come back to, so okay, yeah, that looks about right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the original lightsabers were horrendous things, on set. These rotating poles that broke every time they touched them, and it was just to create a particular effect. So yeah, I think you can get very silly about this, but then that's the same, I think, with a lot of Rivet countery stuff. But as you say, you can be Rivet countery about something that actually exists, and you can go back and kind of prove the point. When it's been made up, it's it's a little harder to defend that one.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but there we go. Yeah. Again, I think it just comes down to what's sensible, and a Death Star that's that sort of big. You get some decent amount of detail on it, and you can maybe, because the windows or whatever the ports sort of for things to fly in and out of are so small on that scale, you think, wow, that's got to be really big, because like all the little bits, you can even have like little spaceships going in and out of it, whatever, like an aircraft carrier kit. You get a feel of how big an aircraft carrier kit is because you have people on it, or you have little airplanes on it, or whatever. And you think, okay, well, I have a feel that an airplane is single seat fighter is about that big. That gives me a yardstick for saying how big that thing is. It's that sort of effect, I suspect, really. Unless you just assume that everyone who looks vaguely human in the Star Wars universe actually is the same size as humans.
Yeah, apart from Yoda, of course.
Yeah.
Casey says, I suggest sticking to Forlorn Firkin Fortnite instead of SI. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm going to draw huge flack for the Americans now, but a cup, really? A cup as a system of measurement? Come on, guys. I won't say
especially of dry goods.
Oh my God! Yeah, I had a recipe from an American friend of mine for pumpkin pie, because they made amazing pumpkin pie. And I want that recipe, because you get pumpkin pie over here. I mean, this was quite a few years ago, but it was never like proper American pumpkin pie. And she gave me the recipe, and it's just like, but she quoted cups of liquids and dry stuff, and it's like, are these the same? So, this was when Google was actually a proper search engine. I still couldn't find a definitive equivalent of, okay, how many mils? Just tell me in my units of measure how much a cup is. Well, it depends. No.
Yeah.
You can't have a variable unit of measure. Anyway.
Well, you'll have like 8 cups of chopped pumpkin pieces. Well, how finely are they chopped? Because that actually significantly impacts the density and thus the mass of pumpkin you require me to cook. Let's just say they're just chopped, but how finely chopped? Well, they're kind of just chopped. Really? Really? It's the old thing, cup of feathers or a cup of lead. You can't say that they're any equivalents other than their volume, and they're not helpful.
Paul says, most of us struggle painting wheels. Why won't manufacturers make pre-painted wheels to help this problem? So there are a couple of manufacturers who do cleverer things with wheels to make them easier. So one of them actually was Airfix's starter set Jaguar. I noticed it on, where they've got the back half of the wheel has the tire on and the center hub. So you can paint that center hub. You can paint the outside tire, and then you put the little donut of the tire, which you can pre-paint, over that, and then you've only got to touch up the edge, in the center of the tire, if you need to, and then you've got a nice crisp edge between the wire centers and the wheels. So I think there's a fair few manufacturers now that will do that. But it's not consistent. I think that's probably a topic for another one of these meetings. And I used to think this about cars, right? I used to drive a Ford Mondeo, which had a quick clear windscreen. One of the best inventions that I think Ford has ever put into a car, especially when you live in the northwest of the UK, which I did at the time. So thick snow in the morning, you go into your car, you switch it on. In a couple of minutes, your windscreen is clear and you can drive. It's fantastic. The rest of the roads aren't suitable for driving on, but you can see.
Yeah.
And then I changed jobs, and I had what was it? It was a horrible car. Oh, a Vauxhall Omega. Massive executive thing. had all kinds of bells and whistles. It had, before GPS, it had, what was it called? Traffic Master. Don't know if you know about Traffic Master. So if you've ever seen pictures or driven in the kind of 90s, 2000s in the UK on motorways, a lot of motorway bridges and stuff had these little pieces protruding. And that was all part of the Traffic Master system. And if you had Traffic Master installed, it would basically monitor motorway traffic and stuff and advise you of traffic ahead so that you could detour around it. So like the crudest type of GPS traffic system ever. Nobody told me about this when I got the car. And I was driving along and the car spoke to me and it almost cracked myself. It was, haunted car. But it didn't have a quick clear windscreen. Like the first frost, and I was just like sitting in there with the blowers going, 10 minutes before it cleared. I'm just like, why don't they have that? Oh, because it's a Ford thing. And I find that with like current manufacturers of kits as well. They all have their little things which they do really well, but other manufacturers don't. You just think, just copy them. Emulation is the most sincere form of flattery. It's just, can you imagine some of the kits we'd have if we cherry picked all of the like best things, the best practices of companies, rather than one company continuously printing solid wheels. Just think, just print them separately.
Yeah,
mold them. Sorry, not print
Yeah,
them.
a lot of companies provide things like neoprene or rubber wheels as well. Just really tires, rather.
What's your thought on those?
Oh, they're okay. I mean, you can still weather them. You can, obviously.
I'm not a big fan.
Quite like them.
I must admit. I mean, this is the ICM Kamaz, which is a great kit, and they have, I think, for this sort of size of wheel. I mean, this is 1/35th scale, but it's almost exactly the same as a 1/25th or 1/24th. I don't know what that is. Land Rover. So again, the scale changes, but the size of the wheel doesn't.
Yeah.
I think when you get to that, it's okay. I don't like them on aircraft, like especially like 1/72nd scale and stuff. I just don't think rubber doesn't look like rubber at 1/72nd scale. If that makes sense. You can't create the effect of what rubber looks like 1-to-1 using rubber 1-to-1 on a small thing.
Sure.
So I would prefer to have them in plastic, just because that gives me the ability to do what I want with them. That's personal preference. Wouldn't manufacturers prefer to build to a price point and size rather than a specific scale? Now, Phil, that's a really good point, because that's, of course, what manufacturers used to do, is just make box size. But when manufacturers, I think this became clear in the first video with aircraft, once somebody's created, so Airfix went heavy, although Frog had done it before in 1/72nd scale, in injection molded plastic. Frog did it first. Airfix went for it wholesale, and they were really successful because they were cheap, easy to produce, and available everywhere, right? So kids bought them, and everybody knows the stories about newsagents and Woolworths and everywhere having bagged Airfix kits. You could go in, you could spend your pocket money, you could go and make them. So they became incredibly popular. And what does the market do when something's incredibly popular? Everybody tries to jump on that bandwagon. And that's what happened. So different companies did it for different markets. Hasegawa did it for Japan. Tamiya were very late on that bandwagon. They didn't produce a lot of 1/72nd scale aircraft. It's only recently, really, they've been doing a few more, like the F-35. They don't do 1/72nd scale armor at all. 48th is as low as they go. So I think, and you saw that in the 60s when everybody was scrabbling to try and make their scale the one that was popular. And it kind of comes back to the crux of this argument: is it important? And it's like, well, it is and it isn't, right? If you find that there is something on the market. I mean, I think of it now, actually. I think there's potentially a shift in the market now with 48 scale and 72nd scale in aircraft, because a 72nd scale aircraft now isn't that much difference in price from a 148 scale aircraft in a lot of cases. So I can buy a 148 scale F4U Corsair from Tamiya cheaper than I can buy a smaller 172nd scale Swift from Airfix, for instance. And when that's the value proposition, if you're agnostic towards subject, what is going to give you a better experience especially if you're a more mature modeler like us, shall we say, which you're more likely to be able to find the parts and stick it together, and gives you a model which is about that size. Because there aren't many 72nd scale kits, scale model kits. I mean, I think there was still plenty of availability for the affordable end of the market, but it's not necessarily 172nd. You can get some really good value 148th kits. Some of the Edward weekend kits are phenomenally good value. And obviously there are more expensive, larger kits, of course, but that's kind of not what I'm talking about, really. I'm talking about that kind of more value oriented part of the market. And there, I think if you're not worried about that, maybe 48 scale is a better prospect. I think that comes down a lot now to, it's probably not that much different to tool a 48 scale aircraft than it is a 72nd in terms of different sizes. There's not really much difference. I'd love to know from an actual manufacturer, but they're unlikely to tell us. Right?
Yeah, I think with 48s you do have the thing where potentially you have more detail that you can reproduce, and therefore you're going to have more parts, and therefore it's going to be more labor intensive on the design process. I think you're absolutely right. The tooling is to a point between 72nd and 48th pretty much irrelevant. But I think it's the actual time spent in the design and prototyping stage that there's a cost difference, and maybe something as simple as the decals, because a cartograph decal sheet is very expensive real estate, and size really matters, and they don't do discounting, I hear. If you go to them and say, right, I've got 5,000 of these kits I want, can you do them? Yes, we can. That's that price. All right. Well, what if I have 10,000? It will be twice as much, sir. No discount. No, it will be twice as much. You want 10,000? It's twice as much as 5,000. How difficult is that, sir? They don't mess because they know they're the best, pretty solidly. So those sort of costs maybe, and the costs of packaging. Is that really going to be dramatically different on a 172nd box as opposed to 148th box? I don't really think so. So you're right. I think the differences between them in terms of outlay are probably not that great now. So,
well, and I think also with the fact that most kits now are designed in CAD, the ability to, because I think you're right. I think it is about the amount of time. Time is your most important and costly asset in most companies. It may be a bit different in model companies when the physical cost of the tooling is a big chunk of change. But if you spend twice as long designing something, that's twice the cost, obviously. But now when you've got a set of files, and you can do a lot of the scaling of that digitally. And yes, you are going to have to change some parts. You're going to simplify going to 172nd. You've got to add more detail going up. But that still takes a huge amount of that out of, the cost and time of that out of that design process. You're not starting from scratch, which you would be, 25, 30 years ago. So I think it's shaving the difference down a little bit. And I think we're seeing a lot of that in stuff today. Probably not in the fact that 148 kits getting cheaper, but the fact that 1/72 kits are getting more expensive.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because if you look at something like the oh god, what are the company that just did the Wasp and the Scout?
LF.
Yeah. I mean, the fantastic models, the detail in them is absolutely stunning, but they're not cheap. They're like 30 quid a piece, something like that. Which, 30 quid is a big chunk of change. You can get
for a helicopter like that big as a Wasp is in 1/72, right? I mean, it's like,
yeah,
that's going to be a challenge.
Challenge is one polite way of putting it. Yes.
I mean, it's also an opportunity.
Yes. The Lightning, the F-35 Lightning II, the Tamiya one, the brand new. Okay, it's a retooled and added to kit for the F-35C, but that's what, £40 RRP. So you can pick that up for like 36. So that's not a lot different from that little Scout. And the physical size of it obviously is like twice the size in every dimension, and a hell of a lot more robust, because I feel that the Scout and the Wasp, if you sneeze, you might break them.
Oh, definitely.
So yeah, it's interesting, because for me, if I really wanted to build a Wasp, and I don't because I'm not a helicopter guy, but I would want it in a scale that would make it, like you said, about that big.
Yeah.
Like the airfix Sea King,
Yeah. Absolutely.
Which might be 1/32, I guess, with it being so small. But that wouldn't really matter to me if I really wanted that subject. Because like with the Lancia Stratos, right, which is a car I loved as a child. That's the reason I want to do that kit. I don't care that it's 1/12 scale. If they brought it out and it was 1/15 scale, I would still build it, because I'm not comparing. I'm not putting it with my collection of 1/12 scale cars, because I don't have one. It's a single item. Now, if I did have a collection of 1/12 scale cars and it was 1/15, that might be an issue for me. Then you're preying upon the OCD bit, which is like, yeah, but it's different. But just going back to that, actually, that point that Phil made. Obviously, that's where we started with modelling. Are we likely to go back to that?
I don't think so, myself. I think the scale dominance is so strong that's likely to stay around quite a long time. Quite a long time. Even with 3D print. I think it was partly because that thing of comparison. I've built the whole of my father's squadron history in 1/72 scale of all the planes that his squadron operated from 1935 to 2010. And it's quite fun to see how big a Harrier is compared with a Buccaneer, or compared with a Seahawk, or a Hawker Nimrod from 1935. It's fun to see the differences and how they've evolved, and how small some things are that you think, it's a jet fighter, but it's teeny tiny. And why is that? Because the jets were so rubbish in those days, because they were very early. Things like that. I want to do the whole thing again 1/48 now, because I prefer the scale and getting the detail and being able to see more of the aircraft, if you like. How the wings fold is a bit more obvious at that scale. Unfortunately, there's two that aren't available, two planes in the history that aren't available. One will be available next year, and one I'm working on the people to
I was going to say, but by the time you've done the others, Gary, I'm sure they'll be available.
Well, the two that are missing are the Scimitar, which DBMK are supposed to be doing next year, and the Hawker Osprey biplane.
Oh, right.
And I was chatting with the guys at DBMK a little while ago, and Ilya, one of the co-owners, is really properly into interwar biplanes. So I spent a lot of the time saying, Do you know there were 4 versions of it, Elia? There are 4 marks of it as well. So you got quite and you could put them on floats as well. That was the other thing. And oh, did I tell you they had wing folds as well? And all the time, wing folds. This is very interesting. And where's Elia? No, we've got a build schedule. We've got a schedule. Stop. Oh, come on, guys, do me a favour. 1/48 is all I ask for. But it's so for that sort of thing, it'd be really good to have them all in one scale, so you can see their relative sizes and how they evolved and all that sort of thing, which is great. But I think a vast majority of modelers aren't as focused, let's say, in a nice polite way, as I am about things like that. I like to see the different. I think sometimes being able to see the difference. So a lot of people are probably roughly familiar with how big a Spitfire is. They've got they've seen a lot of TV, they've seen lots of films, maybe gone to a lot of museums, a lot of air shows, seen them around, see people standing next to them, so they get a good feel for how big a Spitfire is. And to compare something like a Lancaster to a Spitfire, that's quite valuable because I can see how much bigger they were. Or sometimes more recent jets, how not that much bigger they were in absolute size. And well, that's I imagined they'd be absolutely huge. Conversely, how absolutely enormous some things are. Unless you see an AH1 Apache in reality, you don't realize what an absolute monster it is.
Yeah.
When you see it flying around with 2 blokes in it, you think, yeah, that can't be that big. It's probably like the size of some of these little things you see whizzing around carrying executives. And you see one and you think, whoa, this is huge.
Well, the Osprey as well. That thing.
Yeah.
It
gives you a proper size. And maybe that's useful. But I don't know. I don't think that airfix or ICM or anyone else is likely to start producing in other than the regular sort of 4 or 5 scales anytime soon.
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's.
I don't think it's necessarily demand either, to be honest.
No, I think the reason that scale, I think, evaporated out of all this stuff, and we are not stuck with, but we have the predominant scales we have today, is because they do tick a lot of boxes. So 70-second scale is kind of nice and manageable. You can get vehicles and aircraft in the same scale. There's a lot of stuff. It's quite convenient, and a guy is about that big, and you can put people in there and compare it all. It's similar to rail scales, so it has that sort of familiarity without being, necessarily, unless you're absolutely dedicated, that different. 48 scale, quarter scale. I was asked to explain that on the video, which put to the back of my mind because I'll come back to it. It's, again, it gives you that nice size of model. It gives you a nice ability to put detail in, but it still has, without having spiraling costs and it being, like a 1/24 scale Spitfire. Yeah, the airfix one is beautiful. It's £100, which, is not an insubstantial amount of money.
Well, when you've then got to buy glue and paint and tools, all the rest of the stuff you've got to add
even
to it,
consideration of like your weekly bills and stuff, £100 is, probably, that's the food or whatever. So, it's like 48 scale. However, you can buy a 48 scale kit. £20 will get you quite a long way in 48 scale. So, I think, and then again, 35th scale for armor, again, is kind of that nice size. You can get a lot of detail in because the size of figures is quite a bit bigger. You can put figures, you can have dioramas, and they look good. You can see expressions on people's faces. So, I think they have all of those pieces going for them. So, I think if you made something in, I don't know, 1/20th scale, it's like, the stuff's bigger, but am I, it's going to be a lot more expensive, even if you're talking about cars, 1/20th scale is going to give you a bit more, but is it substantially giving you anything more than this is, for probably quite a lot of elevation of price? And I probably don't think that it is. Whereas if you're going to a bigger scale, like with tanks, 1/16 scale, gives you, that is, equivalent to the 124 scale Spitfire or 132nd Lancaster. That's your project piece. It's a great big thing. You might do one of them. There aren't that many people making fleets of 1/16 scale armor. So yeah, I don't see it changing.
That's actually one thing I do find about armor, which is slightly different, is that like most people, I started on 1/72 scale planes, airfix kits. Something you can do over a weekend, and get something that looks reasonably good and it's handleable. Everything's fine, wonderful. And then, 48th is a logical progression, because you think, oh yeah, I can do a bit more, as you say, a bit more detailing. It's a bit more this, and it just feels like a step up, as well, metaphorically as well as physically. I've not found that in armor. I don't do armor, generally speaking, but I started on doing a Jagd Panther as a build on screen with Mikey and on his channel. And I found 1/35th was just a good scale. It was more how complex the kit is, how mini art it is. I've got the Tamiya one, and to me, who's never done that before, it's a box with a load of stuff on the outside. It's not a full interior kit. So to me, that step would be going from 1/35th, everything on the outside kit. The next step up would be to have some sort of interior to it, the engine detail or something, rather than necessarily going up a scale. Whereas in planes, it was a very clear 72nd to 48th, and then 32nd for really interesting things, and 24th only really now and again. I've built like one, and that's the Spitfire. Which I modified somewhat, because I did, because I wanted to, and because I could, because it was that size. It's not something I would normally look at and think, I need another 1/24th scale aeroplane in my life.
No.
But 1/35th armor, I'm finding really approachable, really good. You get a lot of detail. You can do fancy weathering if you want, or you can spray it out the box, and it still looks a pretty good kit to me. Or
if it's a stalwart, you can spray it chrome.
I've started building my one.
How is yours?
Well, it's okay at the moment. I think there is a short shot on one of the parts I'm going to have to get replaced, and I've filled in a couple of bits where I don't think they should be big discs missing from the surface of the metal. But other than that, I'm not that far with it yet to be too upset about it. I felt it so far. The tub went together okay. Just needed a bit of patience more than anything.
The thing for me, and I said it in the video on it, it's okay. It could have been great. And the way it could have been great was not necessarily in the design stage. It was, there were a couple of odd design choices, but lots of kits have that. But in production, if they got the production properly sorted, if it was Japanese production, let's say it, if it was all in, or if it was UK production, if it was made in the same way the Spitfires, that would have been a great kit. As it is, that is the same price as the new Tamiya M36 that's just come out. And looking at that kit,
that's just stupid.
They are not comparable.
No.
As much as I loved that Stalwart, that M36, in terms of quality of molding, detail, it just blows it out of the water. It's just, it's not comparable. That is not something you can say airfix are doing Tamiya quality and have those two kits side by side, because it's laughable. That's like saying that Italieri are doing Tamiya quality, and they're not. Which is unfortunate, because I don't think it would have taken very much for it to get to that level. But hey ho.
I also think they've done something wrong with the plastic. I don't know what the spec is on the plastic. I know it's green, but I don't know how much the different colorant has affected the way the plastic actually works in the molds. It just feels to me like they used to make vintage classic kits. You know, it feels to me like not as rough a design and production as the Joseph Stalin, but the plastic feels like that age of plastic. It doesn't feel like modern, carefully researched polystyrene with all the clever bits and pieces and stuff in it. It just feels a little soapy in a way, and you look at the parts, you thought, I know they're going to be quite crisp, but I'm going to have to prime them and maybe dry brush them to convince myself of that, because in the plastic they just don't look sharp. And I'm sure they are. But it's like a little bit of semi-transparency, translucency, and that sort of like diffuses. I don't know. I'm trying to make it out. It's better than it is, maybe. I don't know.
It's a bit like one of those things, isn't it? That it's a bit like suits, right? You can get a really nice bottle green suit, right? But it has to be a really good suit to pull it off. Whereas if it's a black suit, you know, a black or dark grey suit, it can be pretty cheap and it'll still look good. You know, you can't do much wrong with grey.
Yeah.
And it's the same, I think, with styrene. It's just like if you've got grey styrene, it's just automatically looks better. It's easier to work with too, just on the eyes. You know, it's easier to distinguish detail and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Dark green is not, any dark color isn't great. I quite like.
And also at that scale, it's not like people are going to build it as it is and not bother painting it. So what does it matter what color the damn plastic is?
It does give you that 1970s impression, doesn't it?
Totally. And that's really sad because, as I say, so far it's actually constructed quite nicely. You know, parts are fitted and they look okay. I don't know. I do think maybe their homegrown in-house military vehicle stuff is still a little work in progress. To me, I think they can get a lot better, and the production is across their entire range. Their production standards, as we've discussed as well in the past, is frankly shocking.
If they'd made
and it's
that
so
down
disappointing.
The road, if they'd made that down the road where the Spitfire is being made, that Star Wars, I think, would have been absolutely fantastic.
Totally.
It wouldn't have had the production issues we've seen. They wouldn't have run out of the damn things either.
No.
Or if they had, they could just order some more and they're just down the road. Hey, you know. A few more comments. One I missed before. Sorry, Julian. My parents went on the Orient Express. When the train got to Russia, the whole thing was lifted as there was a different gauge of track. That's great. What did you do that you were in the shop, Andy? Missed that one. Let me know. Julian says, according to the internet, which is never wrong, of course, the Death Star was 160 kilometers in diameter. Wow.
Okay.
So at 160th scale, it would be a kilometer.
That's a lot of styrene. It's a lot of styrene, that, yeah.
When things become too big, just use a part of the model, like chop it up. I see what you're saying. Yeah, like so. Do you remember Italieri? They brought it out again a couple of years ago. Did the F-16 cockpit?
Yeah,
it was like one. What was it, like 1/8 scale or something?
That's
or
right. Yeah.
It was odd. It was like 1/9 scale or something. I think.
Yeah.
Strange one.
Yeah. I mean, one of it is it Border have done the nose end of the Lancaster as a standalone.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Sully did it and put tiny LEDs in it. The internet says one copy is 237 mils. Yeah, but it depends on whether it's fluid or it doesn't necessarily work for dried goods. It's a weird measurement. And also 237, is really just blows off the tongue, doesn't it? That one.
Yeah.
Little things. I think that was in regard to the quick clear windscreen. Who also says, I assumed rubber vinyl tires are used in preference to styrene because they can more easily depict tread patterns and demold successfully. But there are ways around that, like molding in two halves, for instance. We've seen it on various kits where people have made very, very good tires in styrene. So one from Craig for you, Gary. Love you built your dad's squadron in 1/72nd scale. Repeating it in 1/48 is a natural progression. I want a Scimitar too, but it is one of the uglier FAA fighters. Only a line chief could love it.
Actually, the line chiefs probably hated it because I believe it's the only fighter, certainly in British history, to require 1,000 man-hours or more per flying hour.
Ooh, wow,
that needed a lot of servicing. It wasn't a very popular plane. It wasn't a very popular plane as itself. And as one American chap says, it makes an awful lot of noise to go not very fast because it was subsonic.
It's a way of converting fuel into noise.
Pretty much, yeah. That's amazing. Yeah.
Graham says you would think with shrinkflation that companies would be issuing 176 kits as 172nd. Hang on, that's already happened.
Yeah.
Yes, airfix did that for a while. Sam says, talking of 148, do you think airfix 148 World War II fighters, Mustang, Hurricane, Spitfire, are at the priciest side around 29, especially compared with? I would say yes. To be fair, obviously I stock as many different manufacturers of aircraft and models in general as I can. And you do notice for the same subject, big price variations. Generally things like Hobby Boss and Trumpeter tend to be on the more affordable side. Edward are very cost effective, I think, for a lot of subjects. Airfix are really good and I recommend them to everybody for their starter sets. I think their starter sets are fantastic. They're well priced. They're very detailed. They go together very well. I think some of the larger airfix stuff is also very well priced. I think the 124 scale Spitfire is pretty keen, considering it's UK manufactured. It's £100. You can get it for 90 to 95. Not the most recent version, obviously. Which you can get from me for £120 with a £20 voucher, which gets around Hornby's little 10% discount thing. But that is really keenly priced. The stuff in the middle is a bit hit and miss, I would say, in terms of the pricing structure. For example, the Swift, I think, is horrifically priced for what it is. They changed what series it was. So when it originally came out, it was a series, I want to say like 3 or 4. Can't remember what it is, but it was like the 1699 bracket. And now it's like the 26, whatever it is, bracket. Which the Swift is not a big fighter.
No.
He wasn't very swift either, if I recall.
No, it wasn't.
It's ironically named aircraft. And it's just like, well, hang on, I could buy, like you say, one of the Mustang or Hurricane or Spitfire for the same 48 scale. But then when you look at it, you think, but I could buy the Edward one for less. Is it that much worse? No, it's not. Arguably, it's better, So I don't think any manufacturer is a panacea. And I include Tamiya in that. Tamiya have always been the gold standard, but there are some kits out there of the same subject that Tamiya makes that are better than Tamiya's offering. Unfortunately for us, good for the market, because obviously otherwise one company would just dominate. it depends. It depends what you're looking for. So,
Mm.
and I'm not
I
sure.
think if airfix continue the Spitfire with the same base as the new TR9, because that is, when you look at that, it is very, very obviously downscaled from the 1/24 to 48 and then re-engineered for wall thicknesses and all that business. But you can see from the surface patterns, the surface detail on the wings, it is very, very clearly taken from the 1/24, which is a lovely kit. But they've also cured a lot of the problems from the old 48th ones, such as putting the undercarriage legs on accurately. This one uses a massive rectangular peg that sets the splay and the front to back rake absolutely solidly and right first time. And that sort of little piece of design improvement is superb. And if they can keep doing that, it'll be great. So that's sort of, yeah, they're about £29. I don't know, maybe a bit less depending on what you can buy them for. But I think their quality has improving. An older Mark 9, I would say, yeah, I'd probably buy an Edward one. The new Mark 9, when it comes out towards the end of the year, if it's the same base kit as the TR9 is,
I'm sure it will.
It's going to be absolutely wonderful. I think it's going to be a real eye opener. And if they're basing a whole Merlin series on that, then it's about time, and well done them.
Not another Spitfire. Sorry, I had to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to say it before somebody else did.
Hey, do you see Tacom? They've really rocked the market. They've released a Tiger One.
Actually, they've released a
Four of them in one box. Four in one box. 4 different versions of the Tiger One early production.
Early production, yeah.
Depending on which bits you dangle off the back end of it, it's just wonderful. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I know that is kind of a bit of a going off kilter, but if people didn't want them, they wouldn't buy them, and then the companies would stop making them. So when people always say, "Oh, not another Spitfire," it's like, yeah, but people want Spitfires. Otherwise, companies wouldn't make. This is one of the reasons that using Scalemate's releases is a proxy for the overall market. It's not a one-to-one. It can't tell you how much an individual kit sells. But if a kit is released and then it's re-released and it's re-released and it keeps being released, companies don't tend to just throw money away. Making, we've got 2,000 of these in the warehouse. Yeah, but we've got to make another one. So, make some more and chuck it out there. It's just like, no, they don't do that. So, we are, the reason, and it kind of segues back into the topic, the reason scales came out is because people bought them. People were buying 1/72nd, they were buying 1/48th, they weren't buying 1/20th or 1/27th scale kits, which were being made. God only knows why.
Yeah.
But it can't be easy. I mean, what goes into 1/27th? I guess they must have had a 9th scale master, but there we go. I've said it before, keep saying it. You can't have too many Spitfires. Thank you, Phil.
But also, I guess the bottom line is they know they're going to sell. So that is providing your bread and butter basic income to allow you to maybe try one of these or do one of those that otherwise you wouldn't even dream of doing, because no one's going to buy enough of them to justify the time investment. So it's like a loss, almost a sort of cash cow to support other development, and that's pretty much how it works for them.
Yeah, I think people often forget that, and it's an important point to make. It's just like if you have to buy a Spitfire to get something else, something unusual, weird, that's only going to get 1/10 of the sales, so be it.
Back in the day when I was at college, I did imaging science, and it was back in the day before digital stuff at all. Everything was film and chemistry and all that. And people a lot of the guys on the course used to be really sniffy about people using Kodacolor 2 film. Oh yeah, Dad uses Kodacolor 2. He doesn't know anything about this. Da 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 da. And one of the guys on the teaching the course said, just remember, most of the film that gets produced by Kodak, right, when it comes back for processing, there's a summer holiday in the middle and Christmas trees at each end. All right, they don't use a lot of film. It's Kodacolor 2. It handles all of it. But there are so many millions of people doing that, buying this film that you think is rubbish, that allows them to develop the Royal X pan that you're chucking through your high-speed camera or whatever it is. And I think it's very much a similar situation with a lot of model. You look at Edwards, how many BF109s have they made?
Yeah.
They're good. They're damn good kits of BF109s. There are a lot of them. And then you've got the Weekend and Profi Pack and all these different variations. But they sell, and it allows them to develop things. The same with Airfix and Spitfires and Tacom and Tigers. Each company probably has a thing that, not another one of those from them.
Yeah, it's probably
But
Europe
it pays for
with
things.
Revell and
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Little Things Junkie says it'll be nice to have a Spitfire kit. Mark 1, 2, 3, 4, 1500 would be grand.
Absolutely. I've had one of those years ago. Love them.
I had another one here, but I can't find it. The other thing I wanted to just show you guys, let me just get rid of that screen and add this one in, because I mentioned it right at the beginning. ScaleMates. So ScaleMates is a great tool for many, many different things. But one of the things I just wanted to show you, if I enter that, select kits, let's select static model kits, and let's scroll down here. And in fact, to start with, let's click A to Z, because that makes it easier to work this, because it puts it in numerical order. So if I look at let's go 40s, 50s, 60s. Okay. I'll make this bigger. Let's just zoom in a little bit. Not quite that much. Too far. Okay, so on the right-hand side here, over here, we have scale. And as you can see, there are a lot of different scales. So this is the early period of modeling, right? So this is during the just 20 years post-war. And you can see we've got kits in every single different 1, 2 something, all the way up to, here we go, 120th, 121st, 22nd, 23rd, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. We don't have a 1/33rd scale. So that's the first time we've missed. So there was an opportunity there that somebody didn't take. We've got 34, 35, 36, 37. We even have a 1/39th scale. Who the hell thought of that?
1/37th. It's like prime numbers are beginning to come in here, and you're thinking, hang on, that's not been pantographed from anything, dude.
Oh, Sky Leader. Yeah, they were.
Been made that way.
I mean, look at that box art as well. I mean, wow.
That's great, isn't it? Yeah. I didn't know they did tune kits in those days.
But look at that. It's just like not just one company.
Wow.
Monogram.
Jeez, 1/37.
So it's always worth a look. If you want to look at some bizarre stuff, especially the early days of modeling. I mean, look at this one. We've got 41, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 48, of course. The relative popularity, of course, is massively different. But the fact is, people were making, they see 1/50th scale. You see quite a lot of kits in 1/50th scale. People did try to establish it as a scale. Oh, VEB.
Oh dear.
What a terrible company they were. Fujimi. Yeah. You do tend to see a lot of the Japanese. Oh, Hella. There we go. a lot of Japanese companies tried to do logical stuff, which of course the rest of the world didn't accept.
No, no.
Yeah, am I? So, yeah, if you ever fancy looking at some of the more bizarre scales, the early period after the war is a good one. You know, I mean, there's hardly any scales which aren't expressed here. 10-1. That's an interesting. What's a 10-1 scale? The stag Bertram, the stag beetle.
Oh, excellent.
Hawk, 10-1. Wow. Superb.
That's a bad cheese dream right there.
It is, isn't it?
Wow.
So yeah, 150th scale, 137th scale. That's by monogram. So this is it. You know, the companies were just scrabbling to like find what is going to stick. Because if you think 135th is not a naturally, it's not a natural number. It's not anything really. You know,
the other thing that struck me is whether I know we've had this discussion with ICM before about various kits in various scales, and they say the limitation is how big the mold can be, basically. I wonder if some of these earlier scales were, well, we want to make that, but our mold guys say that's as big as they can make a mold. And so either we make it at that scale to fit it in, or we make it bigger and the fuselage has got to be in 2 bits that you have to stick together, or something like that. Maybe there's a production limit as well on size.
Yeah, because a lot of like with scale, you know, why we've come up with some of these scales, the original regions, the rationales at the time all made sense because that's what they were limited to by the technology that they were using. You have to have multiples of your master. So, okay, what's the masters? The masters are typically 1/8. Right, okay, so that gives us 1/16, 1/24, blah, 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 blah. And if we want to do different stuff, we've got to tool different masters. And if they, you know, a company has a particular process, then that doesn't happen. Of course, Revell stick out in that now, obviously having 2 different processes, being that they produce both 24th and 25th scale. But then the Germans did do what they wanted. So, you know, despite being part of the same company.
Yep.
Nick says, Scalemakers is my hero go-to, trying to find models not listed to defeat Gary's mystery box live streams.
Yeah, they do joke that I should really be getting sponsorship from Scalemates or something, because as soon as Nick's cryptic clue comes up, you can almost hear the typing. They're trying to get onto Scalemates. First of all onto Google, then onto Scalemates to find out what his mystery box is. And he almost won last night. He almost won. Just got pipped at the last minute with a guess.
There are some truly bizarre kits available if you go back.
And thanks to Nick, I've had a few of them. I mean, the surfer dude figure that's about that big, with carrying a case 6-pack and smoking a cigar. Yeah, cigars are not white, dude.
Vaguely triangular cigar.
But that was funny. Yeah, Hodad. That was Hodad making the scene, surfer scene. I mean, just bizarre things he sent me.
Well, I mean, I think some of the most unusual things that my dad did, I found on Scalemates. One was a 1-to-1 scale. I can't remember what it was. It's like an Indian musket, basically. Wow. And I remember it used to live behind the sofa. You know,
wow.
The black leatherette sofa.
Yeah.
It was the 70s after all.
Of course. Yeah. That was the law then.
They used to heat up to nuclear temperatures in the sun.
Yeah.
I think it was the same upholstery as in our Hillman Avenger, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, he did that. There were quite a few 1-to-1 scale guns, actually, that he did. He did and I would love to, if anybody knows of like where you can get some of those kits now. I mean, they might come with, you know, a visit from Her Majesty's Constabulary at some point.
Yeah.
But they did a Luger and a Walther, which had full reciprocating mechanisms. They had bullets and stuff. I mean, if you took one of them out now, you would be shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, whole range of guns that my dad did. He did I can't remember what they're called. I think they're Gigantics, they were called. There was one which was a giant scorpion attacking a city,
Mhm.
and the other one was a
Okay.
praying mantis. I think there was a third one, but he didn't have that one.
Mhm.
I think they were AMT. They re-released them a few years ago.
Mhm.
And you see them come up from time to time in various different boxings. But yeah, there are some fairly bizarre models.
Mhm.
I've got some in the shop at the moment, actually, from Hasegawa. They are they're cartoon ghosts.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I got them because I thought, well, I'll get a couple in. They might appeal to somebody,
Just in case.
child
Just
or
in
something.
case.
You never know, you know.
Yeah.
It's one of those nice things, actually. Again, quick offshoot, but people come into the shop and I've got all kinds of weird and wonderful stock bits, and you get them and you think, I don't know if I'll ever sell this. It might end up on the channel because I can't sell it.
Mhm.
And then one guy came in, I guess about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and picked up, I think it was a big scale. It's like 1/16 scale Chevy panel wagon or something. Horrible American ugly thing.
Mhm.
He said, "Oh, I've been looking for one of these for ages." And it's just like, that's great.
Wow.
I think that's a really nice thing.
Come and have a seat, sir.
Yeah, but it's a nice thing to be able to have somewhere that people can find, those
Yeah.
odd things, and not just, oh yeah, it's the airfix Stalwart or the
Mhm.
M36 you could get anywhere.
Mm.
But so the other thing I parked in the back of my mind was 1/4 scale,
Mhm.
which was asked actually by an American viewer of the channel, which you should really know better, because of course it's 1/4 inch to the foot. So that's where 1/4 scale comes from. So it comes from a shortening of an imperial measurement, and it's mainly used in the US, which I always find ironic.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the scales was a 1/4 inch to 2 1/4 feet or something. It was like, or 1 inch to 2
Why?
1/4 feet. And it's like, that's the most awkward conversion. So that just what? Yeah, it's just like,
Quite
okay,
bizarre.
yeah, it's like, so you're
Quite
saying
bizarre.
that's a thing then?
Yeah.
Because
Well, what is that size? What is actually that size that you need to scale it down to there? What is it in reality that you're trying to model here at that size? It just seems a bit strange. What's
I think it was
of a 20?
128 scale, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's 1/28. And they said, but on the box it's like 1 foot equals 1 inch equals 2 1/4. It's like 2
What?
1/4.
Yeah.
What?
Just why?
Anyway. Oh wow, Phil! I built the Kellogg's Frosties SR71, no scale and very few parts.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that was the other thing actually on ScaleMates. They do actually have a little box which has no on the scale, which just means the box was produced without a scale. So they just made it, and it's just like, here's a kit. What scale is it? It's a kit.
Yeah.
And yeah, the Kellogg's stuff obviously was generally any toy thing was like that. But again, in the early days, a lot of the kits had no scale. It was just here is like I say, a Beechcraft Bonanza. It's like, great. Some of them would say 27-inch wingspan.
Mhm.
Tells you what it is. It doesn't tell you what scale that is, what the original aircraft, because again, wasn't important. So over time, we've come to, be conditioned that scale is important. We are scale modelers, and it makes a difference. And yeah, if we have rulers in set scales. I've got a 1/72, 1/48 one. It has various different ones. It's one of these triangular ones that you can then flip, and it has different ones. It's got like 120.
The other problem I saw there's a thing there referencing Thunderbirds, right? A, it's all made up. Okay, we've covered that. But B, you look at Thunderbird 3. I'm going to use this as an example, right? Now, when they're launching Thunderbird 3, the people, Alan and whoever is going with him, are sat on a little couch that's come down. It's gone along a little railway track, and it's been put into the base of this thing that is obviously huge, right? Obviously
Spaceship.
very, very large. It's a spaceship. When it launches, it goes up through like this circular balcony thing.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's shrunk by a factor of about 40 to get through this thing, because you can see the steps and the balcony where people would be leaning. So that scale has just completely blown. So when they say, "Oh, this is 1/350," no, it isn't. Of which part of the launch sequence is it that scale? Yeah, dudes, no, just no. It's a model of Thunderbird 3, which is groovy. I love Thunderbirds beyond measure. But if they can't even get the scale constant, what the hell hope have we got? You know what I mean? It's not happening. It's not just not happening. It ruined my life when I first saw that.
Please.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
I've learned a lot of truths from tonight's discussion. You could say the scales have fallen from my eyes. Where's the ban button? Where's the?
It was all going so well.
Well, I think on that bombshell, we can't continue any longer, Gary, after that joke.
No, there's no coming back from that.
There's no coming back from that. The scale of the offence is too high. So, I thought I'd just add one to myself.
Why not? It's your channel.
So, so Gary, thank you as always for coming on and chatting with me.
My pleasure, Alex. Always good to chat with you, mate.
Whether scale is important, is it important? Yes and no. It's as important as you want it to be. And I think that can be a different answer depending on, the individual and the day and the subject. Like you said, Gary, it's important for you creating the aircraft around your father's service, whereas for something else like tanks and stuff, they don't have to be that scale. They could be something completely different. Whereas competitions, I think it's probably a lot easier with scale because everybody knows what they're doing rather than arriving with something you can barely carry, competing with something like this. Make a level playing field. So we are scale modelers after all, and as I should definitely make a mug with this on. As always, the answer is it depends.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody. Great to have you all come in and watch us chat, and all your engagement from the comments is fantastic. If you did get a free channel membership, please do come over to the Discord. Look out for that pinned comment. I will go over and make sure the link is fresh. And until next time, thank you very much, and have a great rest of your week. Cheers, guys.
Bye.